On a rainy Sunday morning, while tending to the garden, Maggie's father John suddenly collapsed. It was a heart attack. Though the ambulance sirens wailed and he was rushed to the hospital, by evening, he had passed away. At the time, Maggie was 24, and her sister Patty was 18. John's sudden death shattered the Reynolds family's facade of affluence. Behind their luxurious lifestyle lay an unimaginable amount of debt. Eleanor, their mother, was overwhelmed by the mountain of bills that arrived after her husband's death. Their family home in the quiet residential area of Westchester County was already under its third mortgage. Their weekly Sunday worship at St. Patrick's Cathedral became less frequent. Eleanor couldn't bear the sympathetic glances from her church friends. Patty began to distance herself from her high school friends, desperately trying to hide their family's downfall. Maggie made an immediate decision. She would drop out of college and start working. Her first job was as a cleaner in an office building. She worked diligently from early morning until late at night. To think my sister would become a cleaner, how embarrassing for our family. Patty mockingly commented, making sure her friends could hear. Patty, who attended Smith College, thoroughly despised her sister's work. While carefully polishing her expensive designer handbag, she had made it a habit to say, "Cleaning is servants' work." Eleanor took a different approach. She lied to her country club friends, telling them Maggie was studying abroad. Sometimes she would proudly claim, "She's studying at a business school in London." At weekend bridge parties, she continued to spin tales of her daughter's fictional success. However, Maggie quietly forged ahead on her own path. During the day, she worked as a cleaner, and at night, she studied business management at the local community college. While honing her cleaning skills, she steadily acquired business fundamentals. She made The 7 Habits her favorite book and thoroughly studied efficient time management. Gardening, which she started to soothe her tired body, gradually became a hobby. By continuing to tend to the garden her father had loved, she cherished his memory. Reading time while listening to classical music became her greatest luxury. Eventually, she established a small cleaning company. With efficient systems and environmentally friendly cleaning methods, she secured one contract after another. Still, her sister's and mother's attitudes remained unchanged. The cleaning business must be tough, her mother maintained her condescending attitude. Eleanor, dressed in luxury brands and hosting garden parties on weekends, had no intention of understanding her eldest daughter's work. As for Patty, she refused to even acknowledge the existence of Maggie's company. Even after moving to a townhouse in the Upper East Side, Maggie maintained a modest wardrobe. Her elegant theory and inclined suits seemed to express her principles, in stark contrast to Patty's obsession with flashy Gucci and Prada. 10 years passed. One day, an invitation arrived at Maggie's home. It was for Patty's wedding, a lavish ceremony at the Ritz-Carlton Westchester. However, seeing the postscript on the invitation, Maggie quietly smiled. It read, "Please come as part of the cleaning staff." The massive chandelier at the Ritz-Carlton Westchester cast soft light across the banquet hall. Round tables covered with pristine white tablecloths were arranged neatly, each adorned with elegant arrangements of pale pink roses and calla lilies. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the beautiful twilight cityscape was visible. Against the backdrop of Westchester's sophisticated skyline, preparations for the luxurious wedding were steadily progressing. Arriving at the venue, Maggie was wearing a modest navy blue dress. The theory dress emitted a refined sheen, accentuating her dignified presence. A simple platinum necklace adorned her neck. Her hair was carefully styled up, and her understated yet elegant makeup highlighted her clean, beautiful appearance that belied her 39 years. Local dignitaries were arriving at the reception one after another. The women were dressed in high-end designer gowns from Hermès and Chanel, while the men wore Tom Ford and Brioni tuxedos. Members of the Westchester Country Club had gathered in special attire, different from their usual weekend bridge parties. Ms. Reynolds. The receptionist checked the guest list and showed a slightly troubled expression. Some special instructions were visible on the list, even from Maggie's position. "I'll show you to the staff table." At those words, the surrounding guests' eyes turned to Maggie all at once. The country club regulars exchanged glances, whispering among themselves. She walked with dignity through the crowd of guests dressed in luxury brands. The assigned seat was in a corner of the venue, close to the kitchen where service staff frequently passed through. On the table was a place card that read, "Cleaning Crew, Maggie." Next to it was a complete set of cleaning supplies. New brooms, mops, and rags were arranged as if they were table decorations. The tablecloth color was different from other tables, making it immediately apparent that it was for staff use. "Oh, Maggie," Eleanor approached, holding an expensive champagne glass. Dressed in a Chanel tweed suit with a large pearl necklace, her perfect hair and makeup and refined demeanor that showed no sign of age reflected her years of experience in high society. "I'm glad you came to help. Please make sure the venue is spotless for Patty." At those words, suppressed laughter emerged from the table's occupants. In particular, her mother's social circle made no attempt to hide their obvious mockery. Maggie just smiled quietly, remembering the garden she had shared with her father in her heart. "Why don't you change in the staff room?" Patty called out while adjusting her pure white wedding dress. The Vera Wang custom dress perfectly accentuated her slim figure. The 2-carat Tiffany engagement ring sparkled brilliantly in the chandelier light. "That dress is out of place. Your usual work clothes suit you better." The groom, James, was chatting with executives from Anderson Construction. Their business conversation was in full swing. Occasionally, he would glance at Maggie with a scornful look. "We've asked her to clean the venue. We're thinking of letting her handle our facility management too." Loud laughter erupted from those around him. That laughter carried the contempt typical of the upper class. As the reception began, luxurious dishes of filet mignon and Maine lobster were served one after another. At each table, sommeliers carefully explained and poured selected California wines. However, in front of Maggie was placed a simple staff meal. While expensive California wine was being poured for others, her glass was filled with water. "My son's company has a major project coming up," the groom's father's proud voice could be heard. His confidence as a successful businessman exuded from his fine Brioni suit. It's a redevelopment project in Westchester. If this succeeds, our status will rise even further. And Patty will be able to make a fitting society debut. Around the time the Magnolia Bakery special wedding cake was being brought out, Patty approached Maggie's table again. Her pure white dress gleamed even more brilliantly in the venue's lighting. "Sister, this cake costs about a month's salary for you. But that's a world you'll never know, isn't it?" As she said this, she deliberately stared at Maggie's water-filled glass. Maggie nodded silently. And in her heart, she whispered, "This will be the last humiliation." The guests were indulging in the luxurious food and wine, engaging in animated conversations. Topics of high society, episodes from the golf club, boasting about recently purchased luxury cars. The privileged atmosphere of the upper class dominated the entire venue. The country club members would occasionally glance at Maggie, casting looks that suggested she didn't belong. However, no one noticed the dignified light dwelling in the depths of Maggie's quietly seated eyes. As the reception was nearing its end, the Magnolia Bakery special wedding cake had been cut, and guests were enjoying their coffee. The sound of champagne corks popping occasionally echoed, and cheerful laughter leaked from various parts of the venue. The Westchester Society regulars were discussing their latest golf clubs and summer vacation plans. As expected of Magnolia Bakery, the lobster was superb. While elegant conversations flew about, Maggie at the staff table quietly lifted her coffee to her lips. Suddenly, someone who appeared to be the hotel's general manager appeared on stage with a microphone. The man in his 50s stood with a straight back, emanating dignity cultivated from years of experience. In his hand, he held a memo written with a luxury brand fountain pen. "I apologize for the interruption, but I would like to take a moment for a special announcement." At his voice, the venue's bustle gradually subsided. Guests holding champagne glasses all began to focus on the stage. Patty, clinging to her groom James's arm, watched the general manager with barely concealed irritation. "Today is a very honorable day for us at the Ritz-Carlton Westchester," the general manager began speaking in a polite tone. His voice carried a distinctly special resonance, clearly different from usual wedding speeches. "The new owner of our hotel group is present at today's reception." The venue fell silent. Local dignitaries began looking around restlessly. Eleanor exchanged glances with her country club friends, searching for any familiar business figures. Her hand, wrapped in a Chanel tweed suit, trembled slightly. "Actually, last month, our hotel chain, including this hotel, was acquired by a new corporate group," the general manager continued. At those words, the business world's elite took on even more serious expressions. "The representative of that acquisition company is here with us today." Maggie slowly stood up. Her simple navy blue dress softly gleamed in the chandelier light. A sound of gasps could be heard throughout the venue. The expressions of women who had been looking down on her just moments ago froze instantly. "This is Margaret Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Facility Management," the general manager introduced. His tone carried obvious respect. She's a shrewd business leader who has grown the company to over 500 employees and annual sales exceeding $80 million in just 10 years. The venue began to stir. A champagne glass slipped from Eleanor's hand, shattering on the carpet. Her expensive pearl necklace swayed at her trembling neck. Patty's face turned pale. Her lipsticked lips quivered, lost for words. James, the groom, exchanged uneasy looks with Anderson construction executives. Reynolds Company has set new industry standards with its environmentally conscious innovative cleaning systems and comprehensive employee education programs, the general manager continued, stating facts matter-of-factly. Each of his words seemed to pierce the hearts of those who had scorned Maggie. And currently, they manage over 200 major commercial facilities throughout New York State. The groom's father was desperately whispering something to his son. "What's going on? Did you check this?" His voice could be heard from nearby seats. Signs of agitation spread among Anderson construction executives. Even their expensive Brioni suits now appeared slightly damp with cold sweat. And particularly noteworthy, the general manager's expression became meaningful. In that moment of pause, the venue's atmosphere grew even tenser. Reynolds Company also holds the facility management contract for all Anderson construction properties. An annual contract worth $50 million. It's one of the largest deals in the construction industry. The groom's father tried to stand but collapsed back into his seat, his legs shaking. The blood drained from James's face. His arrogant expression had completely vanished, replaced by one of fear. Patty stood frozen, staring at Maggie, her perfect bridal expression now distorted with fear and regret. Maggie quietly surveyed the venue. As if the past 10 years had flowed just for this moment. In her eyes dwelled the memories of her days working as a cleaner and the pride of having overcome those times. The memories of time spent in the garden with her father seemed to shine in her heart. The country club members suddenly changed their attitude, beginning to cast ingratiating looks at Maggie. Expensive jewelry and accessories now seemed to have lost their luster, appearing as mere decorations. Eleanor's social companions averted their eyes from her, whispering among themselves. Calculating gazes crossed as they reconsidered their positions. The previous atmosphere of arrogance had completely disappeared. The cleaning supplies placed before Maggie now seemed to shine as symbols of her success. The new broom and mop, intended as insults, had become proof of her diligence and sincerity. The simple glass of water stood as testimony to her years of restraint and determination. She slowly raised the glass and took a quiet sip. As the venue fell dead silent, Maggie slowly walked toward the stage. Her steps exuded confidence polished over 10 years. Under the luxury hotel's magnificent chandelier, her theory navy blue dress radiated even more elegance. Remembering the scent of the garden her father had loved, she took a deep breath. Taking the microphone, Maggie quietly began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say a few words." Her voice rang clear throughout the venue. Her transparent voice carried the emotions of the past 10 years. The guests' expressions froze with surprise and confusion. Particularly, the agitation of Anderson construction executives was undisguisable. Dressed in their Brioni and Tom Ford luxury suits, they couldn't hide their bewilderment at the sudden turn of events. James, the groom, was drenched in cold sweat, staring at his father's face. "First, let me talk about cleaning work," Maggie began, speaking calmly. Her expression was filled with pride in the decision she had made 10 years ago. 10 years ago, after my father's sudden death, I dropped out of college and started working as a cleaner. I take pride in that work." Sighs leaked from various parts of the venue. The country club members remembered their previous attitudes and showed uncomfortable expressions. Cleaning work is noble work that maintains building value and provides comfortable spaces for people. In that field, I learned efficient cleaning systems and environmentally friendly methods. That became the foundation of today's success. Eleanor tried to fix her crumbling makeup with trembling hands. The pearl necklace at her neck swayed slightly. Years of vanity seemed to be peeling away in an instant. Patty unconsciously crumpled the hem of her Vera Wang wedding dress while staring at her sister. "Over these 10 years, I worked as a cleaner during the day, studied management at night, and gradually grew the company." Maggie spoke about her management methods that combined practical experience with theory. "Now we're entrusted with managing major buildings throughout New York State. Our strengths lie in comprehensive employee education programs and the introduction of innovative environmentally conscious systems." The groom's father tentatively tried to stand. Last night's boasting at the country club now felt like a distant memory. However, Maggie's next words made him collapse back into his seat. "And I'd like to discuss our contract with Anderson Construction," a slight coldness mixed into Maggie's voice. "We have a $50 million annual management contract with your company. This is one of the largest deals in the industry. However, as of today, we will be terminating that contract." The venue erupted in commotion. Anderson executives hurriedly pulled out their mobile phones. They instinctively understood the need for emergency shareholder response. The groom's face turned ashen. His arrogant expression had completely disappeared, replaced by one of terror. "Furthermore, as the new owner of the Ritz-Carlton Westchester, I will be changing today's venue fee to triple the normal rate. All future reservations for anniversary parties and such will be cancelled. Of course, there will be no cancellation fees." Each of Maggie's words seemed to pierce the hearts of the groom's family. Patty let out a small cry. Her Tiffany engagement ring sparkled miserably in the chandelier light. The sound of her dreamed society debut crumbling could almost be heard. And finally, Maggie looked at the groom's family. Her gaze carried 10 years' worth of determination. The large-scale redevelopment project that Anderson is planning. The redevelopment project in the Westchester district, including this hotel, will also be returned to square one. The impact on your company's stock price should be quite significant. The groom's father suddenly fell to his knees in a deep bow. The sound of his expensive suit scraping against the floor echoed in the silent venue. "I'm so sorry. I apologize for my son's rudeness. Please, just the contract termination." His figure was unrecognizable from his arrogant attitude just moments ago. James stood dumbfounded. The project his promotion depended on was vanishing before his eyes. Even the marriage vows exchanged just hours ago now rang hollow. Patty collapsed in tears, her pure white dress spreading across the floor. Her perfect hair and makeup were dissolving with her tears. Eleanor staggered to a chair by the wall. She seemed at a loss for words, facing the reality that her long-established position in society was crumbling in an instant. No one would come to her weekend bridge parties anymore. The country club members showed various reactions, some trying to curry favor with Maggie, others quietly slipping away from the venue. Their expensive accessories now seemed to weigh heavily on their necks and wrists. The glamorous masks of high society were falling away one by one. Maggie quietly put down the microphone. Then, she picked up the cleaning supplies placed in the corner of the venue. "These are proof of my pride," she said. A deep silence enveloped the venue at her words. At that moment, in Maggie's eyes, peaceful memories of days spent in the garden with her father came flooding back. 3 months had passed since the wedding. Maggie, dressed in a simple and clean suit, was reviewing the latest financial reports. Even after terminating the contract with Anderson Construction, the company's performance continued to grow steadily. New management contracts were being signed one after another, and annual sales were on track to exceed $100 million. "President, you have a visitor," her secretary announced in a gentle voice. The door opened, and Eleanor timidly appeared. Her former haughty attitude had disappeared, and her figure in a simple dress conveyed a certain humility. "Maggie." Eleanor's voice trembled. "I wanted to apologize to you." Maggie quietly gazed at her mother. In Eleanor's eyes, she saw sincere emotion for the first time. "I was wrong. I'm truly sorry for looking down on you." Eleanor's voice carried a ring of truth. "As family, I behaved shamefully." Maggie stood up and placed her hand on her mother's shoulder. "Mom, that's enough." Tears spilled from Eleanor's eyes. "I've given up my country club membership. I don't need that world of pretense anymore." Outside the window, spring sunlight gently illuminated the Manhattan streets. "About Patty," Eleanor began. After the wedding, Patty and James's relationship had cooled rapidly, and their divorce was finalized a month ago. She had quit her job at the luxury boutique and was now living back at home. Her former arrogant attitude had disappeared, and after a social media controversy, she had become quite reclusive. "She's reflecting on her actions, in her own way," Eleanor continued. "But she says she can't find the courage to meet you." Maggie picked up documents for a new project with a deep sigh. The file was labeled Vocational Training Program for Low-Income Individuals. "I want to help somehow," Eleanor offered. "I've started doing volunteer work in the community. There, I've discovered what true fulfillment means." At those words, Maggie gave a small nod. The lessons learned in the Garden of Memories with her father were now bearing fruit in a new form. "Mom, would you like to have tea together?" Maggie suggested. A relieved smile appeared on Eleanor's face. Meanwhile, the Anderson family's downfall was swift. James was fired from the company and forced to take a job at a small company in a provincial city. His annual income dropped to 1/3, and he had to move from his luxury apartment to a modest one. Maggie turned her attention to the new proposal on her desk. It detailed a comprehensive vocational training program embodying her belief that anyone can rise up through effort. The curriculum covered everything from cleaning techniques to business fundamentals. "I might accept Patty as the first student in this program," Maggie mused to herself. The spring sunlight streaming through the office window gently touched the potted plants. New buds were swaying slightly. Maggie felt the same breath of life here that she had felt in the garden of memories with her father. "Dad, I've finally found it," she whispered while gazing out the window. The true meaning of success. Beyond Manhattan's skyscrapers, there was a sense of a new dawn approaching.